They even asked, like, what do we want to do? I wanted to fight as soon as possible. So that was what it was, and that was the case. They even asked, they're like, look, if you want the rematch, we don't know, that's not going to be till the end of the year. I go, I ain't waiting until the end of the year. I can get a fight at featherweight and then see what happens later. You know what I mean? Like, that's just how I am.
Volk is awesome, man. So he's willing to not take that massive rematch in the meantime, as he wants to stay active. That's a dangerous fighter right there, man. A mindset to be able to risk the money-making fight in order to just keep himself active and take on the next challenger of his own division. So he's moving weight classes again, right? He went up to 155, now he's going back to 145 immediately. Like, this is months later after his fight with Islam Makhachev. We've seen in the past in many combat sports how that can hurt a fighter's performance, constantly switching weight classes like that. And then he's going to look to jump up to 155, potentially, or he might fight another 145er before he goes and fights Islam Makhachev again. Any opponent of Volkanovski has a dangerous task at hand when they go up against him, because that's the kind of passion, the love, the motivation he has for the sport that a lot of guys do not display. A lot of champions would not have done what Volkanovski just did. Now, some would say it's foolish. He should have just waited. He should have just asked for it and get that big money fight. But the competition aspect of the sport is what drives Volkanovski, not the money that he can make out of it. He is so focused on just getting better, facing the next big challenge. I mean, he even said to Max Holloway, yo, get out of my division, stop taking out my contenders. I want to fight those guys. That's how competitive he is. That's how focused he is on being a dominant force in the sport. You have to appreciate it, man. It's so admirable how Volk's mindset plays. And I even made a video about this way back in the day, about the mindset that Volkanovski has. I've known about this. I've always known he's such a dangerous guy as a champion against any contender. He views himself as the champion chasing the contenders. That's a different kind of mindset than a normal champion has. And back in the day when I made that video, people have been sleeping on that kind of mindset for a very long time. I recommend you guys checking that video out, as he talks more about how he thinks as a champion. Now, there is a risk. There's always a risk with whatever decision you make. If he wants to fight Islam and wait it out and stuff, there is the risk that he'll wait too long and maybe be, I won't say rusty, but probably not in the same mental space that he is when he's active. Some guys operate better when they're active rather than just waiting around. And also, he would have to fight Islam in Islam's place, Abu Dhabi, because that's where they want Islam to fight. If Abu Dhabi's an option, they're always going to have Islam Makhachev there. So just like Islam went to Australia in enemy territory, Volk would have to go to potentially Abu Dhabi in enemy territory. And the other risk is he could lose. Yair Rodriguez is a very dangerous matchup. I do favor Volk for many different reasons, but the threat is there. Just how he even talked about saying that Yair is potentially the most dangerous fighter he's ever faced. And that includes like the welterweights he fought in the day. He says that Yair Rodriguez is the most dangerous man to walk in front of him, and he recognizes the kind of things that Yair can do to him. So that is a level of risk before getting that big money fight. And the other part of it is he probably won't even get the Islam fight. What it seems like, honestly, is the roadmap for Volk and Islam to fight each other again may not happen. If you think about it, Volk says above everything else, he wants to keep himself active over fighting Islam. So, fighting Yair in July is his first fight. Then we're going to have to see what happens between Charles Oliveira and Beneil Dariush, because the winner of that is going to get the title shot and fight Islam Makhachev. More so if Dariush beats Oliveira. But Oliveira is such a big name in the sport, he's such a star, they would probably give him that rematch against Islam because it would bring big numbers. If that were to happen, Islam fights the winner of Dariush and Oliveira, that means that Volk, because he wants to stay active, would take up another fight, potentially against another featherweight. I don't know who that would be, because outside of Yair, it doesn't really make sense for Volk to fight anybody else. I mean, who else is there? Let's say he beats Yair, he already beat Holloway, he already beat Ortega, Arnold Allen's there, but he just lost to Holloway, Emmett is there, but he just lost to Yair, then there's Kelvin Cater, Korean Zombie, and a bunch of other guys that don't make any sense to fight Volk. On Volk's side, it seems like there's no one there for him to fight. And maybe you would have to just do the fourth fight with him and Max, because Max is just that good where he's beating everybody else. I mean, he has a win over the guy that Volk is fighting right now. And he just beat Arnold Allen, which was the other fighter that we were looking to see if he had what it took to face the champion. And he didn't. He fell short against the title gatekeeper. So in the meantime, if Volk wants to stay active, either he takes a fourth fight with Max, or something actually very interesting, if Aljamain Sterling decides to move up to 145, if he is able to beat Henry Cejudo, or even if Henry Cejudo wants to jump up to 145 afterward, because both guys have said they want to move up. And that actually makes perfect sense now. It's another super fight that can happen, a big fight for Volk, while the contenders in his division clear it up a bit as to who should get the next title shot. And they can fight later in the year. Maybe November would be a good one where John Jones potentially is going to fight Stipe Miocic in New York. They can have Volk versus either Aljamain Sterling or Henry Cejudo there. And then after that, you might be able to line up an Islam and Volkanovski rematch, potentially. But the only problem is Islam has a lot of guys coming up that he hasn't fought yet. Volk is the only dominant champion in the UFC right now. Islam just got the belt. He doesn't have the track record yet. He hasn't beaten all these contenders. He still needs to prove himself against these guys because his path to a title was not against the top contenders. He just beat the champion, and now everybody else he hasn't even fought yet. He didn't fight Dustin, who's number 2. He didn't fight Gaethje, who has a win over Fiziev. He didn't fight Chandler, who's number 5, but he's probably going to be at 170 fighting Conor. He didn't fight Fiziev, Gamrot. He did fight Arman. He didn't fight RDA, Jalen Turner. He only has 3 wins in the whole top 15. That's Charles Oliveira, Arman Tsarukyan, and Drew Dober. And honestly, you could see Dustin getting the title shot. You could see Gaethje getting the title shot. You could see Michael Chandler, if he defeats Conor McGregor, get the title shot. Arman Tsarukyan, if he's able to build himself up fast enough, he could get that rematch, and their first fight was very close too. So in the lightweight division, there is a bit of an enigma. Like, we don't exactly know how it's going to shape up. But for Volk's side, it's pretty simple of who he fights next if he beats Yair. It's either Holloway or the bantamweight champion in a super fight. And that's pretty much it. There's no one else that makes sense unless he wants a contender at lightweight. He wants to move up there and fight like a Dustin or Chandler or something. I don't know why he would do that, but he is a guy that would like to stay active. So he would take up any big challenge because that would be a massive challenge for himself. And that's what he's up for. He likes the competitive nature of the sport. And in a rematch with Islam and Volkanovski, let's say it matches together. Let's say Islam defeats Oliveira or Dariush, whoever's the winner of that fight. Volk defeats Yair and then another guy. They fight each other, let's say February of next year. Almost same time they had their first fight. And let's say it's in a neutral area or they find Abu Dhabi again or something. Because I doubt Islam would go back to Australia to fight Volkanovski. It would have to be the other way around or in like Vegas or something, right? Now, Volk has said that both of them have underestimated each other going into the first fight, right? Volk underestimated Islam's striking, Islam underestimated Volk's grappling. That would not be a thing in the rematch. They know what each other are made of going into the second fight. And Islam better have Khabib in the corner. Like, no excuses, right? He needs everything possible. He needs to get everything done in order to, number 1, not make excuses afterward, and number 2, ensure a victory over Volkanovski. So have Khabib in the corner, no short rejuvenation after the weigh-ins, no USADA like the day of the weigh-ins or whatever that was, no lack of saunas or sweatsuits, clean fight, all the skills there, no excuses. Who is, I guess the second best fighter in the world, I guess because John Jones is still around, but John Jones will probably retire in November, so that would bump Islam or Volkanovski up to number 1, whoever wins that fight, let's say in February or March, wherever that happens. Who do I think would win? It's close. It's really close because I do like Volk's chances when it comes to revising his game plan and understanding Islam, because it did look like he could have done more stuff in the first fight, but he was kind of expecting different things out of Islam that weren't there. I know he said he underestimated Islam's striking, but it seemed like he overestimated other parts too, like how strong he was, how good his grappling was, all of that stuff. It looked like he was envisioning a sort of monster of a grappler who is so much stronger than him when that's not what he experienced in the cage, and he was waiting for that monster to show up. He had the weapons, he had all the weapons that deal with that monster, but it never showed up for him to use those weapons. So he was kind of like doing other stuff out there, and underestimating the striking is going to be addressed. Now, Islam's side, there was some advice that Khabib was giving Islam that he should have went for in the fight, but he didn't. So if he does in fact have Khabib in the corner, it would change like in between round game planning, because Khabib has a great eye for the sport. Because even for the first fight, Khabib was correct in a lot of things he said, not everything. He did say that Volk was going to be a tougher fight than Oliveira was, and back then, nobody believed him. And then he did say that knees in the clinch would be a very big thing for Makhachev, and they in fact were. He was catching Volk with a lot of knees in the clinch, and he said that he was going to take his back and choke him out. Now, he wasn't able to choke him out, so there was something from Volk that we've seen even back when Brian Ortega tried to submit him. He's very hard to choke. Islam got into the position that Khabib was saying that was going to happen, so a lot of the steps were met on the ground for Islam to get the position where he can get the choke, but the execution of the choke was proved to be much more difficult than even Khabib expected. And he did say that Islam was going to take all of Volk's energy, which was very strange, and it didn't actually happen because Islam doesn't fight that way, right? Islam doesn't fight like Khabib. He's not a super aggressive grappler. he will take time, he will wait back and give the opponent space. So potentially that might have been part of the game plan that Islam was originally supposed to go for. Go after Volk and suffocate him. But not only did Islam not fight that way, the way Volk was going at it didn't allow Islam to do that. Unless Islam wanted to put himself in a lot of danger. Islam looked to be a lot more comfortable countering on the feet against Volk rather than chasing big shots and then shooting double legs and stuff like that, because Volk is coming out there to stand his ground and go blow for blow with Islam. And it's very hard to back someone up who's doing that. Now, it did cause Volk to get hurt sometimes, right? He got caught with some shots that he probably didn't need to be in those kind of exchanges, but that kind of approach makes it hard to back someone up like that, unless you hurt them, of course. So if I think about it, I do like Volk's chances by refining his game plan and now understanding who Islam is better than the other way around. Khabib being in Islam's corner is still something we don't know if it's going to happen. If Khabib is not in Islam's corner or if he's not involved there, I definitely like Volk's chances much more. And just stylistically, I do like Volk in this. So yeah, I would pick Volkanovski to beat Islam in the rematch, but it's still a very tough fight. I wouldn't be surprised at all, of course, if Islam hurts him on the feet again, even gets him in a submission or holds him down. I wouldn't be surprised in any of those scenarios, but I do like Volk's more well-rounded style with his aggressive approach going into the rematch. He's a very intelligent fighter. I think his IQ is a little bit higher than Islam's, and that would be the difference maker of the fight. I would love to see it, but there's a lot of moving parts here before we get to see a rematch, right? Both guys have to win their fights, and if the roadmap is there, Volk is going to fight another time after Yair and before he gets an Islam rematch. And that is a very dangerous scenario, right? Yair Rodriguez is more dangerous than anybody else. I think Cejudo or Sterling both lose to Volk. It's the Yair fight that everybody has to keep their eye on. And as for Islam Makhachev, he's honestly in more danger than Volk is, because Dariush and Oliveira can both beat him. A lot has been exposed of Islam Makhachev from that Volkanovski fight. And both Dariush and Oliveira could take advantage of some of those weaknesses, because Oliveira also seemed to have underestimated Islam's striking, and he would not be doing that in the rematch, knowing how he was able to strike with even Volkanovski, who, by the way, also underestimated Islam's striking. Dariush and Oliveira would not do that, and they could possibly beat this guy. Watch, after all this anticipation, Yair head kicks Volkanovski, Beneil Dariush drops Islam with a left hand and chokes him out, and then everything's different. But leave the comments below, what do you guys think? Do you guys want to see the rematch? What do you think the plans are going to look like here? Do you think Islam will beat the winner of Oliveira and Dariush? Do you think Volkanovski will beat Yair Rodriguez? And will Volkanovski wait it out after the Yair Rodriguez fight?